The first real bite of the Iraqi defense came not at the famous grid line, but several kilometers before it. By the time Eagle Troop of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment reached roughly 68 Easting on February 26, 1991, the desert had become a closed, blowing world of dust and half-seen shapes. The troop was moving east ahead of 7th Corps, part of the cavalry screen, feeling for the enemy, while the 1st Infantry Division followed behind. This was still reconnaissance in name, but the word was beginning to thin under pressure. At 68 Easting, Eagle Troop discovered that it had reached the security zone of the Tawakalna Division, and the desert ahead was no longer empty. It held tanks, bunkers, minefields, and men waiting in prepared positions. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. A grid line is not a place in the way a village or river crossing is a place. It is a way of imposing order on land that offers few names of its own. For the soldiers in Eagle Troop, 68 Easting meant they had crossed into a new stage of danger, not that they had arrived somewhere visible and marked. The Shamal had reduced normal visibility to perhaps 800 or 1,000 meters, sometimes less in dust and vehicle wash. That is close range in modern tank warfare, close enough that an enemy position can seem to appear out of nothing. Yet through thermal sights, American crews could detect heat signatures far beyond what the naked eye could manage. The battlefield had two realities at once: dust to the human eye and ghostly heat at distance through the sight. Captain H.R. McMaster, commanding Eagle Troop, had spent months and years training his soldiers for moments when clarity would be incomplete and hesitation costly. Now the test arrived in fragments. Shapes appeared through the thermals. Reports came over the radio. The troops' platoons had to keep formation while sorting out what was dead ground, what was abandoned, and what was alive with enemy weapons. A cavalry troop at this point cannot behave like a parade line, all neat spacing and perfect knowledge. It has to move like a living thing, sensing, adjusting, protecting itself, and telling the regiment what it has found. The first sharp contacts around 68 Easting were not yet the full battle, but they were the moment the screen touched the wire of the Iraqi system. The Iraqi security zone existed for a reason. It was meant to slow the attacker, reveal his direction, and buy time for the deeper defense. Tanks were placed in revetments, shallow prepared positions that helped hide and protect them until they fired or were discovered. Bunkers sheltered infantry and weapons. Minefields threatened to stop or channel American vehicles into narrower paths. Artillery and observers could complicate movement if the attackers halted or bunched together. This was not random debris scattered across the desert. It was a forward defensive layer designed to turn movement into caution. The Iraqi army had been hurt badly by weeks of air attack, but at 68 Easting, it still had enough structure to make the cavalry work for every meter. The first contacts were violent because both sides were operating inside a shrinking world. Iraqi soldiers in prepared positions may have believed the dust gave them concealment and the revetments gave them a chance. In some circumstances, that would have been true. A tank dug in and waiting can be a lethal ambush weapon against an attacker who drives too close without seeing it. But the Americans brought thermals, stable guns, disciplined crews, and a training culture that rewarded quick action. When an Iraqi vehicle appeared as a heat signature, the American crew did not have to stop and hold a long council of war. The commander identified, the gunner laid on, the loader worked, and the vehicle fired, often before the defender could make sense of what had found him. Still, this was not a simple story of one side seeing perfectly and the other seeing nothing. The storm confused everyone. Dust could hide friendly vehicles as well as enemy positions. Thermal sights could reveal targets, but they did not explain the whole battlefield. A crew might see a hot shape and have to decide in seconds whether it was a tank, a carrier, a truck, a burning wreck, or a friendly vehicle at an unexpected angle. Minefields added another kind of fear, because the most dangerous thing on the ground might be invisible until a track found it. Eagle Troop's advantage lay not in certainty, but in the ability to act intelligently without certainty. That is the difference between technology as a tool and technology as an illusion. At 68 Easting, the fight also began to test McMaster's control of his troop. A troop commander had to think beyond his own vehicle. He needed to know where his platoons were, what they were seeing, which enemy positions had been destroyed, whether mines or bunkers threatened the route, and how his actions fit into the regiment's wider screen. This is command under compression. The world outside the turret narrows to dust and flashes, but the commander's responsibility widens. Every destroyed tank is useful, but not if the troop loses its alignment or outruns its purpose. Eagle Troop had to fight hard enough to survive contact, yet remain part of the larger reconnaissance mission that was guiding 7th Corps toward the Republican Guard. The Iraqi defenders were also learning, if only for a brief and terrible time, what kind of opponent had reached them. For months, they had lived under bombing and uncertainty, and many units had reason to expect an attack from another direction or at another pace. Now, American cavalry was arriving through dust from the west, not as a cautious probing force that would stop at the first sign of resistance, but as an armored troop able to destroy vehicles while still moving. The psychological effect of that kind of contact is difficult to measure, but it matters. A defense depends on the belief that positions, obstacles, and fields of fire will make the attacker pause. When the attacker sees through part of the concealment and keeps coming, the defender's plan begins to lose its grip. The prepared positions around 68 Easting also showed why air power, despite its strength, had not made the ground battle unnecessary. Aircraft had struck Iraqi units for 38 days, but revetments, bunkers, camouflage, and dispersion could preserve enough combat power to surprise ground forces later. A battlefield can look broken from above and still contain men with weapons below. Eagle Troop's job was to discover that difference. It found vehicles and positions that still needed to be destroyed, bypassed, or reported. In doing so, it performed the essential cavalry function that no bombing campaign can fully replace. It converted suspected enemy presence into confirmed battlefield knowledge, and it did so at the price of moving first into danger. The minefields were especially important because they threatened tempo as much as vehicles. A mine does not have to kill a tank to be effective. It can stop it, force it to turn, make crews hesitate, and cause following vehicles to bunch together. In a fast-moving armored screen, hesitation can ripple across the troop and then backward into the regiment. The presence of mines told Eagle Troop that it was not simply chasing scattered remnants, it was entering a deliberate security belt. That realization sharpened the stakes of every decision. Push too blindly, and the troop might drive into a killing area. Stop too long, and the Iraqis might recover. Artillery might find the halt, and the Corps' momentum might begin to leak away. This was the line between textbook reconnaissance and battlefield reality. In theory, a cavalry troop makes contact, reports, develops the situation, and helps the commander decide what comes next. In reality, contact develops at the speed of gunfire. Enemy tanks do not wait politely while a scout writes a perfect report. Bunkers do not announce whether they are occupied. Artillery may fall while the troop is still trying to understand the first position. Around 68 Easting, Eagle Troop had to perform several missions at once. It had to protect itself, maintain contact, destroy immediate threats, report what it found, and keep the regiment moving toward the next control line. That combination is why modern armored cavalry can so quickly become a main battle force. The encounter at 68 Easting mattered because it told the 2D Armored Cavalry Regiment that the real Iraqi defensive system was now under its tracks and in its sights. The regiment had not merely found stragglers, it had entered the forward zone of a Republican Guard defense tied to the larger Tawakalna position, with other Iraqi armored forces nearby. That meant the famous battle was not going to be avoided by simply moving a little farther east. It was forming already. One bunker, one revetment, one minefield, and one radio report at a time. Behind Eagle Troop, the 1st Infantry Division and the rest of 7th Corps needed the cavalry to keep clarifying the picture. Ahead of Eagle Troop lay the 70 Easting limit of advance, where caution and mission orders would soon collide with opportunity. The importance of 68 Easting is that it was the warning shot of 73 Easting, the moment when uncertainty hardened into contact. It showed the old truth that tanks rarely fight a clean duel in open space. They meet defenses made of terrain, mines, prepared positions, infantry, artillery, poor visibility, nerves, and command decisions. It also showed the modern answer to that complexity. trained crews using thermals, radios, combined arms habits, and disciplined initiative to keep moving through confusion. From Cambrai to the Gulf, armored warfare had always promised movement. But movement only matters when an army can survive the first resistance without losing its mind. At 68 Easting, Eagle Troop proved it could enter the storm, find the enemy's outer teeth, and keep pressing toward the jaws beyond.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.